The desert sun dipped low behind jagged Arizona peaks, splashing the horizon with molten oranges and bruised purples. Dust hung in the air like smoke from an unseen fire, kicked up by the soldiers moving across the rocky terrain. Sergeant's voice cut through the roar of helicopters and distant gunfire like a whip. "Any sharpshooters here? We need eyes on that ridge now." The words echoed over the battlefield. Some men froze, caught between the roar of battle and the urgency of the order. Bullets ricocheted off jagged rocks, kicking sparks into the air. Dust clouds spiraled, swallowing the figures in their gray haze. Shouts bounced off cliffs and across canyons, carrying a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and determination. From the far end of the line, almost invisible in the chaos, a girl shifted. Riley. She was 19, the youngest in the squad, often overlooked, her presence barely acknowledged. Quiet, reserved, almost ghost-like, she moved with the kind of calm precision that unnerved the veterans. Nobody thought of her as a fighter. But now, in the fading light, she was all anyone could focus on. She raised her sniper rifle with deliberate care, adjusting her scope. Every muscle in her body was coiled, but her breathing remained slow and even. The desert smelled of gunpowder and dust, and the faint metallic tang of blood lingered in the air. Her eyes scanned the ridge across the canyon, noting every shadow, every twitch of movement. Sergeant didn't see her yet. He was busy barking orders, rallying the scattered squad. "Hold your positions, don't give them an inch." Then Riley fired. The shot echoed across the canyon like a gunmetal bell, sharp and terrifying. Time seemed to freeze for a heartbeat. The enemy sniper, perched high on the ridge, slumped to the ground, a plume of dust erupting around him. For a moment there was silence, only the wind and the distant hum of helicopters. His jaw went slack. The squad looked at each other, disbelief etched into their faces. Who just stammered, finally spotting Riley in the dust haze. The quiet girl didn't respond. She lowered her rifle, scanning the ridge for the next target, every nerve alert, every instinct screaming that this was only the beginning. Riley had changed the battle in a single shot. The squad felt it, a ripple of awe running through them. Their fear mixed with relief. Someone had the skill to hold the ridge, to watch their backs. But veteran instincts screamed caution. Something about her calm, almost mechanical precision was unsettling. Too precise, too confident, too quiet. Then came the first whisper of movement along the ridge. Another enemy, faster, almost unnaturally so. Riley's eyes narrowed. She tilted her scope, heart hammering now, not from fear but anticipation. This wasn't just a random sniper. Someone had trained to counter people like her. A bead of sweat traced the line of her temple, and she inhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. Every second mattered. One wrong move and the ridge would be lost. One wrong second and the enemy would see her. The wind shifted. Sand stung her cheeks. The roar of the distant helicopters faded into the background as she focused. Then another shadow appeared, moving with careful intent along the ridge. Riley's finger hovered over the trigger. The desert seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere shouted again, but the words were drowned out by the tension gripping the canyon. Riley exhaled softly, sighting the target, and fired. The bullet tore through the air, dust erupted, a figure crumpled. And in that heartbeat, the squad realized this quiet, overlooked girl had shifted the entire battlefield. But Riley's eyes stayed on the ridge, scanning. She knew, somewhere up there, something even more dangerous was waiting, and it had noticed her. The fight was far from over. The ridge was alive with movement now, shadows flitting along jagged rocks, glinting rifles catching the last of the sun's dying light. Riley adjusted her scope again, the cold metal pressing against her cheek, grounding her. She was a calm eye in the storm, but inside, adrenaline hammered through her veins like a war drum. She spotted them, enemy soldiers, small squads, moving with purpose, scanning the canyon below. One step too close to the edge, one wrong twitch, and squad would be wiped out. Riley's hands were steady, her breathing measured, but her mind raced. A sudden crack of a rifle echoed from the far side of the ridge. Bullets pinged off rocks near her. She flattened against the boulder she had been using for cover, heart hammering. This wasn't just a firefight anymore, it was a hunt, and someone was hunting her. Her eyes narrowed as she tracked a figure moving unnaturally fast, a shadow among shadows, almost anticipating her every glance. It was as though this soldier had been trained to counter her specifically. Riley's stomach tightened. Who was this, and why were they here? Squad was pinned down. Corporal shouted, ducking behind a rock. They're flanking us. We're gonna get wiped out if we don't move. His voice trembled with urgency, but Riley ignored it for a moment, focusing on the ridge. She took a deep breath. 1 shot, 2 shots. Her bullets found their marks, picking off enemies trying to advance, buying precious seconds for her squad to reposition. Every click of her rifle was a heartbeat in the canyon, a warning to anyone who dared cross her path. Then Riley noticed it, a uniform insignia she knew all too well. Her stomach dropped. It was familiar, the kind of emblem carried only by former U.S. operatives, soldiers trained in elite covert tactics. Her eyes widened. This wasn't a random ambush. Someone had planned for her specifically. Her pulse quickened, not from fear but from recognition. Memories she had buried long ago flickered in her mind. Long nights in desert simulators, tactical drills she wasn't supposed to remember, missions classified so tightly that even her own team didn't know. The enemy wasn't just skilled, they knew her methods. A sudden whistle of a bullet cutting past her ear jolted her back into the present. She rolled behind her cover, keeping her rifle trained on the ridge. The shadowy figure she had spotted earlier froze for a heartbeat, then vanished behind a rock formation. Riley's mind raced. She realized that if she didn't act quickly, her squad could be overrun. She had to draw this hunter out, expose him before he struck. Every instinct screamed at her, every training session she had endured since she was 15 coalescing into clarity. Somewhere below was trying to reorganize the squad. "Fall back!" he shouted, but the words were drowned out by the sharp cracks of gunfire and the wailing wind. Riley ignored him. She had one chance, one clear shot, and if she missed the ridge, her squad, everything could be lost. Her fingers tightened around the trigger. Her breathing slowed, measured, every second counting. The world seemed to contract to the scope, the ridge, the shadow, the target. And then movement. A glint of metal, a flash of motion. Riley's heart skipped a beat. The shadow had returned, it was coming for her. And in that moment, she understood something terrifying. This wasn't just another soldier. This was someone who could anticipate her, someone who had trained to erase the quiet, overlooked ones first. She exhaled slowly, almost imperceptibly, raising her rifle with deadly intent. Her pulse was racing, but her hands didn't shake. The hunter was coming, and Riley was ready. The first shot wasn't the last, and the quiet girl knew it. Back at the squad's temporary base, whispers spread faster than wildfire. Riley's shot had shifted the battlefield, but no one could stop talking about how a quiet, almost invisible 19-year-old had taken down a trained enemy sniper with terrifying precision. "She's a ghost," muttered Corporal, his voice trembling slightly as he leaned against a sandbag wall. "First engagement, and she already, I don't even know." Don't know," hissed Sergeant, eyes scanning the darkening desert horizon. His jaw was tight, lips pressed into a thin line. "She just saved half our squad from getting wiped out. Do you have any idea what that means?" Other soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Riley, meanwhile, had crouched behind a crate, cleaning her rifle with methodical care. Her face was calm, unreadable, betraying none of the storm inside her mind. She hadn't joined the army to be noticed, to be praised. She had joined because survival and precision were all she knew. And right now, she had to focus. There was something bigger lurking in the shadows, something no one else had seen yet. Her eyes flicked back to the ridge through her scope, scanning the rocks for movement. One figure caught her attention, moving unnaturally fast, a ghost within the shadows, surveying the battlefield with terrifying skill. Riley's pulse quickened, not from fear but recognition. She had seen those movements before, during training exercises long buried in classified files, missions she had been part of in secret before she had been reassigned to a regular squad. A cold realization hit her. This enemy wasn't random. This was someone trained to counter her specifically. Someone who knew the methods she had honed over years of covert operations. Her mind raced through fragments of memory. Desert drills under harsh suns, long nights in simulation rooms, the rhythm of breath and trigger, anticipation and patience. She had been trained to survive when outnumbered, to strike first when underestimated. And here she was, facing a foe who mirrored her exact tactics. Approached, his face lined with both awe and concern. "Riley, that shot back there, how did you do it?" "I waited," she interrupted quietly, her eyes never leaving the ridge. Her voice was soft but commanding, carrying a weight beyond her years. "He's waiting for me, I just waited longer." Opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no words. He had seen elite soldiers in action, people with decades of experience, but Riley's calm, surgical precision was something else entirely. She wasn't just fighting the enemy, she was controlling the battlefield with every breath, every heartbeat. A sudden crack of a sniper rifle from the ridge yanked Riley back into the moment. Dust erupted near her squad, the sharp smell of gunpowder filling the air. Bullets pinged off sandbags, sending small explosions of grit into the air. Her squad dove for cover, but Riley stayed low, her focus unbroken. Her eyes narrowed on a target, one of the enemy soldiers moving with a practiced, almost inhuman grace. And then she saw it, the insignia on his uniform. Recognition hit her like a punch to the gut. This was a former U.S. operative trained for missions so covert that few outside the Pentagon knew his name. Riley's jaw tightened. He wasn't just skilled, he was dangerous, intelligent, and methodical. And worst of all, he had her attention. Riley's mind raced, connecting the dots. This battle wasn't random. The enemy knew her techniques, her rhythm, the way she read a ridge or timed a shot. She realized with chilling clarity that the fight had been planned to test her, to draw her out. Her pulse was steady, but a shiver ran through her spine. This wasn't just war, this was personal. Somewhere above, the shadow moved again, circling, waiting, hunting. Riley's finger hovered near the trigger, her scope zeroed in. Every instinct screamed that one wrong move could spell disaster, not just for her, but for her squad. And in that tense silence, a horrifying truth settled in her chest. The real battle hadn't even begun. Night fell over the desert like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The sun had disappeared behind the jagged peaks, leaving only shadows and the distant glare of muzzle flashes to light the battlefield. The squad was scattered, pinned behind rocks and sandbags, each soldier's face streaked with dust and sweat. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off stones, sending sprays of sand into the gloom. Riley stayed low, every nerve alert, her sniper rifle aimed at the ridge. Her scope picked out figures in the darkness, shadows moving in coordination, the enemy advancing with unnerving precision. She had anticipated some of them, had prepared mentally for the first assault, but the night brought new threats. A sudden crack of a rifle just past her left ear made her flinch slightly. Reflexively, she dropped flat, pressing her cheek to the sand, eyes scanning. The enemy wasn't just skilled, they were hunting her squad with a cold, calculated strategy. Every shot Riley took had to be perfect. One mistake and men would be cut down. "Corporal, cover that side." His voice rang out from a nearby boulder, sharp and commanding. But even his orders seemed drowned out by the whine of bullets, the echo of gunfire, and the low rumble of armored vehicles approaching in the distance. The battlefield had turned into a living nightmare. Riley shifted behind her cover, scanning through the scope. She spotted movement, another figure creeping along the ridge, faster, more precise than anyone she had faced. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just an enemy soldier. This was the shadow she had sensed before, the one who mirrored her tactics, who anticipated every movement she made. A scream cut through the darkness. A soldier from her squad, caught out in the open, had been hit. Riley's stomach tightened. She knew the cost of hesitation. Click, her rifle jammed. The metallic snap reverberated in her ears, and for the first time in hours, fear flickered across her mind. The shadow was getting closer. The enemy was closing in. Dove beside her, tossing a backup rifle. "Use this," he shouted, pulling her down as another hail of bullets shredded the air above them. Riley didn't hesitate. She grabbed it, hands steady despite the chaos, eyes locked on the ridge. Her squad scrambled to regroup, moving behind whatever cover they could find. Dust choked the air, visibility dropped to mere meters, and the desert wind carried the metallic scent of spent rounds and blood. Every second felt like an eternity. Then Riley's sharp eyes caught it, movement low and deliberate near the canyon's edge. One of her men had gone down, dragged behind a boulder by another. Her heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't lose anyone else. Not tonight. Not like this. Riley exhaled slowly, calming herself, training every instinct to perfection. She aimed, finger steady on the trigger, her breathing measured. Snap, bam! A figure fell from the ridge, another enemy down. But the shadow, the hunter, was still out there. She could feel it, a predator circling, calculating, waiting for the exact moment to strike. And Riley knew one truth that chilled her to the bone: she couldn't run, not now, not when the lives of her squad hung in the balance. She peered over the boulder, eyes scanning every movement, every flicker of shadow. The sound of footsteps, the rustle of fabric, the faint glint of metal, it all came together. She recognized the rhythm, the signature of someone trained to exploit hesitation. Her jaw tightened. Every ounce of her focus, every heartbeat, every breath was devoted to survival and precision. She had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This was someone who knew her, someone who had anticipated her every move. The wind shifted again, carrying the faintest sound, a soft, calculated footstep moving deliberately across the ridge. Riley's finger hovered over the trigger. Her pulse roared in her ears. The hunter was close, too close. And in that moment, as the darkness swallowed the battlefield, Riley realized that the true test was about to begin. One shot, one mistake, one heartbeat, and everything could be lost. The desert night had become a predator's playground. Shadows stretched across jagged rocks, every rustle of fabric or whisper of movement amplified in Riley's senses. Her squad huddled low, hearts hammering, rifles trembling in the grip of adrenaline. But Riley's movements were calm, precise, almost eerily serene. Her eyes scanned the ridge with the trained patience of someone who had spent years waiting for a single opportunity. She spotted the enemy sniper, the shadow who had been stalking her squad like a ghost. He was crouched low, scanning for movement, adjusting his aim. Riley's pulse quickened, not with fear but with recognition. She had faced sharpshooters before, but none like this. Every motion he made mirrored her own training, as if he had anticipated her tactics before she even thought them. Her hand gripped the rifle, finger brushing the trigger lightly. Every muscle was coiled, every breath measured. One shot, one perfect, calculated shot, and she could turn the tide. Snap, bam! The shot cracked through the night air, sharp as lightning. Dust and small stones erupted near the enemy sniper. He tensed, and for a split second their eyes seemed to meet, hunter and hunted, locked in an unspoken understanding. Riley's pulse remained steady, even as the world around her erupted in chaos. Another shot, bam! The sniper's shoulder jerks, he dives behind a rock. Riley adjusts quickly, calculating the distance, the wind, the angle. She fires again. The ridge falls silent. The enemy sniper is down, but Riley doesn't exhale. Her eyes sweep across the battlefield. Every movement, every shadow is a potential threat. The night is far from over. Emerges from cover, shouting over the echoing quiet. "Riley, how did you?" "I waited," she murmurs, voice calm, eyes still trained on the ridge. "He was waiting for me, I just waited longer." The squad looks at her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Jaw tightens. He has seen trained soldiers in action, but Riley's precision, her patience, her ability to manipulate the battlefield, it was something else entirely. But even as they regroup, Riley senses another movement. A shadow flickers along the far edge of the ridge, too fast, too deliberate. Her stomach tightens. Whoever is there isn't just skilled, they're intelligent, calculating, anticipating every move she might make next. Her mind races. The enemy sniper was only the first layer. The real threat, the one orchestrating this ambush, is still out there. And now, having seen Riley in action, he will adapt. Riley adjusts her scope once more, scanning the rocky terrain. The desert is silent, but every whisper of wind carries danger. One wrong move, 1 second of hesitation, and her squad could be wiped out. She notices something on the ridge, a glint of metal. Another soldier, smaller, stealthy, moving with careful intent. Her pulse spikes. This isn't the main threat, but it's a scout, a signal that the enemy is still advancing. Riley knows she has to act fast. She lines up the shot. Her finger hovers over the trigger, steady, unwavering. Her heartbeat is a drumbeat in the quiet night. Snap, bam, the enemy scout crumples. Her squad exhales, a mixture of relief and disbelief. Shakes his head, muttering, she's unbelievable. But Riley doesn't relax. The shadow she sensed, the real hunter, is still out there, and now he knows her. He knows what she can do, and he will strike again. The night holds its breath. The desert waits. And Riley, the quiet girl nobody expected, knows that this battle is far from over. The first strike was hers, but the real war has just begun. The desert night had become a predator's playground. Shadows stretched across jagged rocks, every rustle of fabric or whisper of movement amplified in Riley's senses. Her squad huddled low, hearts hammering, rifles trembling in the grip of adrenaline. But Riley's movements were calm, precise, almost eerily serene. Her eyes scanned the ridge with the trained patience of someone who had spent years waiting for a single opportunity. She spotted the enemy sniper, the shadow who had been stalking her squad like a ghost. He was crouched low, scanning for movement, adjusting his aim. Riley's pulse quickened, not with fear but with recognition. She had faced sharpshooters before, but none like this. Every motion he made mirrored her own training, as if he had anticipated her tactics before she even thought them. Her hand gripped the rifle, finger brushing the trigger lightly. Every muscle was coiled, every breath measured. One shot, one perfect, calculated shot, and she could turn the tide. Snap, bam! The shot cracked through the night air, sharp as lightning. Dust and small stones erupted near the enemy sniper. He tensed, and for a split second their eyes seemed to meet, hunter and hunted, locked in an unspoken understanding. Riley's pulse remained steady, even as the world around her erupted in chaos. Another shot, bam! The sniper's shoulder jerks, he dives behind a rock. Riley adjusts quickly, calculating the distance, the wind, the angle. She fires again. The ridge falls silent. The enemy sniper is down, but Riley doesn't exhale. Her eyes sweep across the battlefield. Every movement, every shadow is a potential threat. The night is far from over. Emerges from cover, shouting over the echoing quiet. "Riley, how did you?" "I waited," she murmurs, voice calm, eyes still trained on the ridge. "He was waiting for me, I just waited longer." The squad looks at her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Jaw tightens. He has seen trained soldiers in action, but Riley's precision, her patience, her ability to manipulate the battlefield, it was something else entirely. But even as they regroup, Riley senses another movement. A shadow flickers along the far edge of the ridge, too fast, too deliberate. Her stomach tightens. Whoever is there isn't just skilled, they're intelligent, calculating, anticipating every move she might make next. Her mind races. The enemy sniper was only the first layer. The real threat, the one orchestrating this ambush, is still out there. And now, having seen Riley in action, he will adapt. Riley adjusts her scope once more, scanning the rocky terrain. The desert is silent, but every whisper of wind carries danger. One wrong move, 1 second of hesitation, and her squad could be wiped out. She notices something on the ridge, a glint of metal. Another soldier, smaller, stealthy, moving with careful intent. Her pulse spikes. This isn't the main threat, but it's a scout, a signal that the enemy is still advancing. Riley knows she has to act fast. She lines up the shot. Her finger hovers over the trigger, steady, unwavering. Her heartbeat is a drumbeat in the quiet night. Snap, bam, the enemy scout crumples. Her squad exhales, a mixture of relief and disbelief. Shakes his head, muttering, "I don't even, she's unbelievable." But Riley doesn't relax. The shadow she sensed, the real hunter, is still out there, and now he knows her. He knows what she can do, and he will strike again. The night holds its breath. The desert waits. And Riley, the quiet girl nobody expected, knows that this battle is far from over. The first strike was hers, but the real war has just begun. The desert had fallen into an uneasy silence, broken only by the distant hum of helicopters and the soft, deliberate movements of enemy forces repositioning. Riley crouched behind her boulder, her rifle cold against her cheek, eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. The night had become a chessboard, each step calculated, each second precious. Her mind, however, was elsewhere. Memories she had buried deep, secrets from her past, missions she had never spoken of, flickered to life. She remembered the early mornings at classified training compounds, the endless drills that blurred into nights, the simulations where she had been trained to anticipate an enemy's every thought. She had been 15 when it began, a child in the making of a weapon, but the world had required her to survive, to adapt, to become invisible yet deadly. Nobody on this squad knew. Not a single soul had any idea that Riley had once been part of an elite covert unit, a ghost trained to strike before anyone even knew she existed. She had left that world behind, or at least she had tried. Now that world had found her again. The shadow on the ridge moved with preternatural skill, a predator who had been trained to hunt people like Riley. Her chest tightened. This wasn't a random ambush. It was calculated, personal. Someone who knew the tactics, someone who could anticipate her moves, someone who had trained her in a way. Her squad was exhausted, pinned down behind rocks, sandbags, anything that could offer the illusion of safety. Shouted instructions, but his voice sounded far away. Riley barely noticed him. Her eyes were locked on the ridge, scanning for the smallest hint of movement, the faintest glint of metal. Every instinct she had learned in her hidden past screamed that the enemy would strike at the exact moment they detected hesitation. Then came the rumble, a low, terrifying vibration across the desert floor. Armored vehicles, heavier than anything she had anticipated, were rolling into position, flanking her squad, cutting off the escape routes. Riley's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a fierce, cold clarity. This was a trap. They were outnumbered, and every second of delay would cost lives. She raised her rifle, scanning the ridge again. The shadow moved into position higher, gaining vantage. Riley realized with grim determination that the only way to survive was to draw him out, to force him into a position where her skill could counter his. Her fingers tightened around the trigger, remembering long hours of silent patience, of waiting for a heartbeat before acting. Sweat streaked her cheek, her vision sharpened, the noise around her fatting to a dull hum. Every memory, every skill from her past, every lesson she had been taught was now alive in her hands. Suddenly, a distant scream shredded the night. A soldier from her squad had been hit, dragged under the cover of rocks. Riley's jaw tightened. She had trained for moments like this, but the stakes had never been higher. Not with friends on the line, not with the shadow still moving above. She exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse, and adjusted her scope. One shot. One careful, silent strike. If she missed, she could lose more than the battle. She could lose the lives of the people she had grown to care about in this short, brutal campaign. Riley fired, dust erupted, and the enemy scout collapsed. But she didn't relax. Somewhere above the ridge, the real threat waited, analyzing, calculating, adapting. Her pulse thumped in her ears. The past had returned. The battlefield had shifted, and Riley knew with a cold certainty that the true test of her skills and of her will was about to begin. The night was far from over. The ridge was quiet again, but it was a deceptive silence, the kind that made every shadow, every rustle of sand, feel like a threat. Riley crouched behind a jagged boulder, eyes scanning through her scope. Her squad was pinned, exhausted, tense, waiting for a miracle, and she knew that miracle had to come from her. The shadow, the hunter, was still out there. Riley could feel it in the way the desert seemed to hold its breath, the way the night air carried faint, calculated footsteps across the ridge. He wasn't just skilled, he was patient, precise, deadly. And he had learned from watching her. Every move she had made, every shot she had fired, he had adapted to. Riley exhaled slowly, centering herself. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about protecting her squad. Every second she waited and the others risked being cut down, and she couldn't fail, not now. She raised her rifle, scanning for the faintest flicker of movement. A shadow shifted on the far edge of the ridge. Her pulse quickened. She lined up the shot, calculated the wind, measured the distance. Snap! Bam! The enemy scout collapsed, dust spiraling into the night air. One down, but the main predator remained. His voice broke the tension, distant but urgent. "Riley, fall back, get the squad out." She shook her head. Retreat meant abandoning the one position keeping the enemy in check, the position she had held since the battle began. She couldn't let that happen. Her eyes narrowed and a fierce determination burned through her. One by one, she fired, each shot precise, surgical, taking down enemies trying to flank her squad. Every pull of the trigger was a message. She was in control. But then the flash. A figure emerged from the smoke, moving with terrifying speed. Riley froze. It wasn't an enemy. It was someone she hadn't seen in years, someone she thought she had lost forever. Her mind screamed, trying to place the face, the figure. Memories collided. Training missions, orders never spoken, a bond forged in the most dangerous of circumstances. And now he was here in the middle of this firefight holding a gun. Time seemed to slow. Riley's finger hovered over the trigger, heart hammering. Her squad, unaware of who had appeared, was busy fending off enemy fire. The hunter had noticed the distraction and paused, recalculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Riley weighed the impossible. The figure could be friend or foe. She didn't have the luxury of hesitation. Her instincts, honed over years of silent survival, kicked in. She shifted slightly, aiming carefully. One shot, precise, not to kill, but to warn. Snap, bam! The ground exploded just inches from the figure, sending sand and dust into the air. The man froze, then dropped slightly behind cover, startled but unharmed. The hunter above twitched at the disturbance, giving Riley the opening she needed. She continued to fire, controlled and lethal, thinning the enemy ranks, forcing them back, forcing them to reveal their positions. Squad, inspired and shocked, followed her lead, moving forward with renewed purpose. Riley's quiet determination had turned the tide again. The shadow, the trained predator who had been stalking her and her squad, was now exposed, forced to act under her control. Riley's pulse was steady, eyes sharp, mind sharper. She had drawn him out. She had shifted the battlefield. But even as the immediate danger receded, Riley knew the fight wasn't over. The desert held more threats, the night more hunters, and the secrets of her past were not finished with her. The quiet girl who everyone had underestimated had become the fulcrum of the battle. And as she crouched behind her boulder, scanning for the next threat, Riley realized something chilling. The war wasn't just about survival. It was about proving she was the deadliest force on that ridge. And the night still had one more test in store. The night clung to the desert like a heavy veil, broken only by flashes of gunfire and the distant rumble of armored vehicles. Riley's squad was scattered but alive, every soldier breathing a little easier now, inspired by the quiet girl who had become their unseen shield. Yet Riley knew the fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, the shadow, the predator, was still watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Riley crouched behind a jagged boulder, finger poised on the trigger. Her eyes scanned the ridge, every twitch, every flicker of shadow, every glint of metal accounted for. The air was tense, thick with the smell of dust, gunpowder, and sweat. Her squad had retreated slightly to regroup, giving her a lone vantage point over the battlefield. Then she saw him, the figure from the past, the one she hadn't expected, the one she thought she had lost, stepped fully into view. A gun raised, eyes locked on her. Riley's breath slowed, heart steady, pulse controlled. Every skill, every lesson, every memory from her secret past came rushing back. This was a moment that demanded perfection. One miscalculation, one split second of hesitation, and disaster would strike. Riley didn't move, she didn't flinch. Instead, she fired not at him, but at the ground just inches away. The shot kicked up sand, a warning. The figure froze, startled, recognizing both her skill and her intent. The hunter above twitched, distracted by the sudden movement, giving Riley the crucial opening she needed. Snap, bam. Another enemy crumpled. Riley's shots were precise, surgical, forcing the remaining forces to reveal themselves, one by one, unable to hide from her deadly rhythm. Her quiet precision turned the battlefield into her canvas. Every pull of the trigger painted a story of survival, control, and lethal calm. Squad, emboldened, moved forward with renewed purpose. Riley's lead had shifted the tide. The shadow, the trained predator, was exposed, forced to act under her rules. She could see his hesitation, the split-second delay in his movements as he recalculated. He had underestimated her, the quiet girl who had seemed insignificant. Dust rose in swirling clouds around the battlefield. The armored vehicles that had threatened to crush them now stalled, the enemy disoriented, scrambling for cover. Riley's squad pressed the advantage, moving with a speed and precision fueled by her actions. The desert night erupted into controlled chaos, every shot and movement dictated by Riley's foresight. Finally, the battlefield fell silent again. The remaining enemy forces retreated, demoralized and confused. Riley lowered her rifle, sweat streaked across her dusty face, heart still racing, adrenaline still pulsing through her veins. She had survived. She had protected her squad. She had shifted the battle completely. Approached cautiously, eyes wide. "Riley, you—" He stopped, realizing no words could capture what had just happened. The quiet girl, overlooked and underestimated, had become the fulcrum of the battle. She had turned impossible odds into victory. Riley exhaled, allowing herself a fleeting moment of relief. Her eyes scanned the ridge one last time, ensuring no threat remained. But deep inside, she knew this was not the end. War, like the desert, was unpredictable, relentless, and unforgiving. And those who underestimated the quiet ones, those who ignored the ghosts, would always pay the price. She turned to her squad, their faces lit by the soft glow of the rising moon, a mixture of awe, respect, and gratitude reflected in their eyes. Riley's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She hadn't needed recognition. She hadn't needed praise. She had done what she was trained to do: survive, protect, and outmatch any threat that dared cross her path. The night settled over the desert once more. The battle was over for now. But Riley, the quiet girl who had become the deadliest force on that ridge, knew one truth with absolute clarity. In war, the quiet ones are always the deadliest. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the ridge, someone was already taking notes. The battle was won, the legend had begun,